What do you think you are doing? This wall is completely unacceptable. You are blocking the right of way, and these people need to leave.
I told you, you need to tear this down by Friday. And what is this nonsense about an injunction? You are in direct violation of the—
I don't understand. Where did this wall come from?
I can't get out. The entire street is blocked. This permit is invalid until the board reviews the survey. Stop all construction immediately or face legal action. The survey is quite clear. The property line runs exactly along these stakes. That is absolutely ridiculous. This driveway has always been HOA property.
The HOA president was in my driveway before 7:30 in the morning. She was screaming loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear. Her face was red, her hands were shaking, and every time she pointed at me, roars. Her voice got sharper. Behind her, almost 24 cars were trapped inside Cedar Hollow Estates. Engines were running, garage doors were open, neighbors stood on their lawns in bathrobes. Roars. Work shirts and slippers. Some looked angry, some looked confused, but all of them were staring at the same thing, the concrete wall I had just built across the HOA's favorite driveway.
This is the certified survey.
Roars.
And the
Marlene
recorded
Ashford,
deed.
the HOA president,
The seal
stormed
confirms
toward
the
my
boundary.
garage door.
Thank you, sir.
She
We will
slapped a
handle
stack
this.
of papers against it so hard that the sound echoed down the street. Then she turned back to me and yelled that I had blocked an official community access road. Roars. She said I had endangered the residents. She said I had destroyed property values. She said I had 10 minutes to tear the wall down. One of the board members kicked the gravel near the base of the wall. Roars. Another one kept shouting that they were calling the sheriff. Marlene stepped closer to me. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were wide. She told me I had finally crossed the line. I looked at her. Roars. Then I looked at the wall and I stayed calm. I pointed to the bright orange county permit taped inside a plastic sleeve on the front of the wall. Then I pointed to the fresh survey stakes. Roars. They ran in a straight line across the edge of my property. That only made her angrier. She spun around and yelled to the neighbors that I was punishing the whole community. Roars. She said I was bitter because the HOA had improved an ugly strip of land while my wife and I were away on our honeymoon. But she left out one important detail. That strip of land was mine. Roars. She also left out what the HOA had done while Rachel and I were in Hawaii. They had sent a contractor onto my property. They had pulled out my survey stakes. They had turned my security camera toward the sky. Roars. They had dug up my sprinkler line and they had built a decorative stone wall, 11 feet inside my deeded boundary. They thought I came home with no proof. They thought I would be too scared to fight them. Roars. They were wrong because my camera had a backup cloud recording, and I had already watched every second of it. When the sheriff arrived, Marlene walked toward him like she had already won. Roars. She waved her HOA binder in the air. She said the driveway belonged to the community. She demanded that he order me to remove my wall right there. The deputy looked at her papers. Roars. Then he looked at my county permit. Then he looked at my recorded deed. Then he looked at the survey map in my hand. For the first time that morning, Marlene stopped yelling. The deputy asked her one simple question. Roars. Where was the recorded easement? Marlene froze. The board members stopped talking. The neighbors went quiet because there was no recorded easement. A few minutes later. Roars. The county surveyor unfolded the original subdivision plat on the hood of his truck. He traced the boundary line with his finger. Then he looked up at the crowd. That was the moment everyone understood what had really happened. Roars. I had not blocked the HOA's driveway. I had built a legal wall on my own land. The real problem was much bigger. For almost 20 years, the HOA had been using my private property as their driveway. Roars. Before all of this happened, I was not the kind of person who looked for trouble. My name is Nathan Miller. I worked as a warehouse operations manager for a building supply company outside Raleigh. Roars. North Carolina, my life was simple. I went to work early, I came home tired, I cut my grass on weekends, and I tried to keep peace with every neighbor around me. I did not move into Cedar Hollow Estates because I wanted drama. Roars. I moved there because it felt quiet, the streets were clean. The houses were spaced just far enough apart. There were old maple trees near the entrance, and at night the whole neighborhood had that calm suburban feeling people work years to afford. Roars. My wife, Rachel, loved the house before I did. She saw the backyard and started imagining a garden. She saw the side yard and talked about planting privacy trees. Roars. She saw the little patch of land along the south edge of the property and said it would be perfect for a bench, a row of hydrangeas, and maybe one day a small play area for kids. Roars. That land mattered to us. Not because it was huge, it was not. It was a narrow strip beside the driveway the HOA liked to use, but it was ours, it was written into our deed. It was marked on our survey. Roars. And we had paid for every inch of it. Buying that house was not easy. Rachel and I had saved for years. We skipped vacations, we drove old cars, we ate more cheap dinners than I want to admit. Roars. When we finally signed the closing papers, it felt like we were not just buying a house. We were buying stability. We were buying a place where our life could begin. My father had always warned me about property lines. Roars. He had worked construction most of his life. He used to say that fences, trees, and driveways cause more fights than politics. So before we closed on the house, I paid for a full boundary survey. Roars. It cost more than I wanted to spend, but I wanted to know exactly what I owned. The surveyor walked the lot with me. He showed me the corners. He pointed to the side strip. He explained that the HOA had a utility easement nearby. Roars. But not a driveway easement across my land. At the time, I did not think much about it. I just kept the paperwork in a folder. I also saved a digital copy on my laptop. That one boring decision ended up saving my home. Roars. For the first few months, Cedar Hollow seemed normal. The HOA sent the usual welcome packet. They listed rules about trash cans, grass height, mailbox colors, and approved fence styles. Roars. Some of it was annoying, but none of it felt dangerous. Marlene Ashford introduced herself at a Saturday community cleanup event. She was polite at first, too polite maybe. She asked if Rachel and I planned to make changes to the yard. Roars. I told her we wanted to plant trees along our side property line. Her smile changed a little when I said that. She said the HOA preferred that area to remain open for community access. Roars. I told her I would check the rules. Then I sent the HOA a copy of my survey with a simple landscaping request. I thought that would settle everything. I thought showing them the property line would prevent confusion. Roars. Looking back, that was the moment they realized exactly where my land was, and that was also the moment they decided they wanted it anyway. A few weeks later, Rachel and I got married. Roars. It was a small wedding, nothing fancy, just family, close friends, and a rented hall with string lights. After everything we had saved for, the honeymoon felt like our first real breath in years. Roars. We left for Hawaii on a Monday morning. Before we left, I walked the yard one more time. The orange survey stakes were still there. The grass was fresh. The side strip was empty. Roars. Rachel stood beside me and said she could already picture the trees. I remember smiling at that. I remember thinking that when we came home, we would finally start building the peaceful life we had talked about for so long. Roars. So if you have ever dealt with an HOA that acts like your property belongs to them, leave a comment and tell me how far they tried to push it, because sometimes the first warning sign is not a fine. Roars. It is not a letter. It is not even a threat. Sometimes it is the way they look at your land like they already own it. And when Rachel and I came back from our honeymoon 12 days later, roars. The quiet little strip we had planned our future around was gone. In its place stood a stone wall I had never approved, and the HOA had built it while they knew I was out of town. Roars. We got home from our honeymoon late on a Sunday afternoon. Rachel was still wearing the little flower necklace she bought at the airport. I remember the sun was low. The street looked calm. Roars. For one short minute, everything felt normal. Then I turned into our driveway. Rachel sat up straight in the passenger seat. She said my name in a quiet voice. Not scared, not angry. Roars. Just confused. I followed her eyes toward the south side of our property, and my stomach dropped. The open strip of grass was gone. The orange survey stakes were gone. The 2 young maple trees Rachel had planted before the wedding were gone. Roars. In their place was a stone wall. A brand new decorative stone wall. It ran along the side of my yard like it had always belonged there. It curved near the back corner. Then it tied into the edge of the HOA driveway. Roars. The stones were clean. The mortar was fresh. There were still muddy tire marks in the grass, and on the front of the wall, someone had screwed in a small metal sign. It said, Cedar Hollow Estates Beautification Project. Roars. Approved by the HOA board. Rachel did not say anything at first. She just opened the car door and stepped out. I watched her walk toward the wall. Then she stopped where her trees had been. Roars. There were 2 rough holes in the ground. The roots had been torn out. The soil around them was crushed flat by machinery. That was the first moment I felt anger hit me, not loud anger. Roars. Not the kind that makes you scream. It was colder than that. It was the kind of anger that makes your hands go still. I walked the length of the wall. I already knew something was wrong. Roars. But I needed to see how bad it was. The wall was not sitting near the property line. It was inside my yard. Far inside my yard, I went to the garage and pulled out the paper copy of my survey. Roars. Then I grabbed my tape measure. Rachel stood beside me while I measured from the corner marker near the back fence. Once, then again, then a third time. The result did not change. Roars. The wall was almost 11 feet inside my deeded boundary. 11 feet, not 11 inches, not a small mistake. 11 full feet. That meant the HOA had not just brushed the edge of my property. Roars. They had taken a strip of land wide enough to park a truck on. They had built a permanent structure on it, and they had done it while my wife and I were thousands of miles away. Roars. I walked to the side of the house. That was when I noticed the sprinkler damage. One line had been cut and left exposed. A sprinkler head was cracked in half. Mud had dried over the patio stones. Roars. The side gate was scratched, and my security camera, the one mounted under the back corner of the roof, was pointing straight up at the sky. I stared at it for a long moment. Rachel looked at me. Roars. She asked if the wind could have moved it. I said no. That camera was bolted in. Somebody had touched it. I went inside and opened my laptop before I even checked the footage. Roars. I sent one email to the HOA. I kept it short. I said we had returned from our honeymoon and found a wall built on our private property. I asked who authorized the work. I asked for the contractor's information. Roars. I asked for the permit number, and I asked them not to enter my property again. I thought maybe there had been a mistake, a serious mistake, an expensive mistake, but still a mistake. Roars. The next morning, Marlene Ashford proved it was not. She arrived at 8:05 with 2 board members and a man in a contractor polo shirt. She did not apologize. She did not ask how our trip was. Roars. She did not even pretend to be surprised. She walked straight into my driveway and said the board had already reviewed the matter. Reviewed the matter. That was how she described a wall built on my land. Roars. I told her the wall was 11 feet inside my property line. She smiled like I had said something childish. Then she told me homeowners often misunderstand surveys. She said Cedar Hollow had always used that side strip for community access. Roars. She said the wall improved the look of the neighborhood. She said the HOA had every right to maintain and beautify common use areas. I told her it was not a common use area, it was my property. Roars. I had the deed, I had the survey, and I had sent them both before I left town. The contractor shifted his weight but did not speak. One of the board members crossed his arms. Marlene stepped closer. Roars. Her voice dropped. She said I needed to be careful about making accusations. She said the HOA had attorneys. She said fighting them would be expensive. Then she pointed at the wall and told me the structure was staying. Roars. Rachel came outside when she heard that. Marlene looked past me and spoke directly to her. She said new homeowners sometimes struggle to understand community living. She said marriage was stressful. Roars. She said we should not let emotions turn a simple improvement into a legal problem. That was when Rachel's face changed. The honeymoon glow was gone. She looked at the 2 empty holes where her trees used to be. Roars. Then she looked back at Marlene. She asked who gave them permission to remove her trees. Marlene barely glanced at the yard. She said anything planted in a shared visual corridor could be removed for community benefit. Roars. Shared visual corridor. I had never heard that phrase before. Because it was not in the bylaws, it was something she had invented because it sounded official. I told her the conversation was over until they sent me their documents. Roars. Marlene laughed, not loudly, just enough to make it clear she thought I was weak. Then she said something I never forgot. She said, Nathan, you can wave your little survey around all you want. Roars. But this neighborhood is bigger than your little strip of grass. Then she turned to the contractor and told him not to worry. She said the board would handle me that afternoon. Roars. An HOA violation notice appeared in my mailbox. It said I had altered a community landscape area without approval. It accused me of interfering with an approved beautification project. Roars. It demanded a $750 administrative review fee, and it warned that additional fines could be added daily if I continued to challenge HOA authority over the access area. Roars. I stood in the kitchen reading that notice twice. Rachel read it once and put it down like it was dirty. They had built on my land, they had removed our trees, they had damaged our sprinkler line. Roars. They had turned my camera away, and now they were fining me for it. That night, 3 neighbors knocked on my door. One told me the wall looked nice and I should let it go. Roars. Another said Marlene had warned people that I was trying to block emergency vehicles. The 3rd neighbor said he did not want trouble, but he had seen workers on my property while we were gone. Roars. He said one of them pulled out orange stakes and tossed them into a dumpster. When I asked if he would write that down, he got nervous. He said he had to live there too. I understood. Roars. That was how HOAs kept power, not just with rules, with fear. Fear of fines, fear of liens, fear of being labeled difficult, fear of becoming the next target. But I was already the target. Roars. And I was done pretending this was a misunderstanding. Still, I did not touch the wall. I did not rip down the sign. I did not yell in the street. I did not post about it online. Roars. Because the moment I reacted badly, they would make the whole story about my behavior. So I did the one thing Marlene did not expect. I got quiet. I opened my laptop again. I logged into my security system. Roars. And I started pulling every camera file from the 12 days Rachel and I were gone. That was when I found the first video. A white contractor truck rolled up beside my house at 6:42 in the morning. Roars. A board member stepped out with a clipboard. He walked directly to the orange survey stakes. He looked around. Then he pulled the first one out of the ground by the time the clip ended. Roars. I knew this was not a mistake, and the next video was even worse. I watched the first video 3 times. Then I watched it again with Rachel standing beside me. Neither of us spoke. Roars. There was nothing to say yet. The camera said enough. The footage showed a white contractor truck pulling up beside our house before sunrise. The street was still dark. Our driveway was empty because we were in Hawaii. Roars. A man from the HOA board got out first. His name was Dennis. He had always acted friendly at meetings, but on that video he did not look confused. He did not look lost. Roars. He walked straight to the orange survey stakes like he already knew where they were. He bent down, he pulled one out of the ground. Then he carried it to the open dumpster sitting near the curb. Roars. A few minutes later he pulled out another one, then another. By the time the workers unloaded their tools, the boundary markers were gone. That was the moment I stopped wondering if the HOA had made a mistake. Roars. Mistakes do not pull out survey stakes before construction begins. Mistakes do not throw evidence into a dumpster. Mistakes do not point a homeowner's camera at the sky. I kept going through the footage. Roars. Clip after clip, hour after hour. I saw workers unload stone blocks. I saw them run string lines across my grass. I saw one of them look up at my camera, then he called someone over. Roars. A second man walked to the corner of my house. He reached up with both hands. Then the camera view tilted slowly toward the clouds. After that, the video only showed blue sky. Roars. Roofline in the top of a maple tree. But they had missed something. That camera was not the only one recording. I had a doorbell camera facing the driveway. I had a side camera above the garage. Roars. And I had cloud backup turned on. I started downloading everything. I saved the files by date. I saved copies on my laptop. Then I saved more copies on an external drive. Then I uploaded a full folder to cloud storage. Roars. I did not want one technical problem to destroy my case. Rachel made a timeline while I pulled the videos. She wrote down the date and time of every truck. She wrote down when the stakes disappeared. Roars. She wrote down when the camera moved. She wrote down when the trenching started. By midnight, our kitchen table looked like a small legal office. There were printed photos everywhere. Roars. There were notes on yellow pads. There was a copy of our deed. There was the closing packet from the title company. There was the survey I had paid for before buying the house. Roars. And there was the HOA violation notice sitting in the middle of it all. That notice still made me angry. They had entered my property. They had built on it. They had damaged it. Roars. Then they fined me for interfering with their project. But I knew anger would not win this. Paper would, video would, recorded documents would. So the next morning I took a personal day from work. Roars. I drove to the county records office. I brought my deed. I brought my survey. I brought the HOA notice, and I brought photos of the wall. The clerk behind the counter was patient. Roars. She helped me pull the original subdivision plat for Cedar Hollow Estates. She also helped me look up recorded easements tied to my lot. That was the first time I noticed something strange. Roars. There was a utility easement near the south side of my property. It allowed access for water, sewer, drainage, and electrical maintenance, but it did not say anything about HOA vehicle access. Roars. It did not say community driveway. It did not say private road. It did not give the HOA the right to build walls. It did not give residents the right to drive across my land. I asked the clerk if there might be another document. Roars. She searched by subdivision name. She searched by lot number. She searched by HOA name. Nothing appeared. That did not prove everything yet, but it told me where to look next. Roars. I went to the county permitting office. I asked for the permit tied to the new wall. The permit existed, but the description was vague. It said decorative entrance wall. Common area adjacent to lot 27. Roars. Lot 27 was my house. The phrase common area bothered me because my deed did not show that strip as common area. My survey did not show it as common area, and the county plat did not show it as common area. Roars. I asked if the county had inspected the exact boundary before approving the permit. The staff member shook her head. She said permits are often approved based on the applicant's description. Roars. That meant the HOA had told the county the land was common area, and the county had no reason to question it at the time. But now I did that afternoon. I called the same surveyor who had done my closing survey. Roars. His name was Paul. I told him what had happened. I sent him pictures, then I sent the old survey. He went quiet for a moment, then he asked me not to move anything until he came out. Roars. 2 days later, Paul arrived with his equipment. He set up near the back corner. He checked the monuments. He measured from the recorded points. Then he walked the line slowly. Roars. Every few feet he marked the true boundary with fresh stakes. The result was worse than I expected. The HOA wall was not just a little over the line. It sat inside my property for almost the entire length. Roars. At the deepest point, it was just over 11 feet past the boundary. Paul printed a new survey certification. He also marked the wall location in relation to the deeded property line. Roars. When he handed me the paperwork, he said the same thing my father used to say. The ground does not care what people believe. Only the records matter. After that, I called a property attorney. Roars. Not a general lawyer, not someone who mostly handled traffic tickets or divorce paperwork. I found an attorney who dealt with boundary disputes, easements, HOA conflicts, and land use. Roars. Her name was Carla Bennett. I brought everything to her office, the videos, the timeline, the HOA letters, the violation notice, the deed, the survey, the permit record, the photos of the damaged sprinkler line. Roars. The pictures of Rachel's trees pulled out of the ground. Carla reviewed it all without saying much. Then she leaned back in her chair. She told me not to touch the HOA wall. She told me not to block anything yet. Roars. She told me not to answer Marlene's calls. She told me not to argue at a board meeting. She said people like Marlene wanted emotion because emotion created mistakes. Then Carla drafted the first demand letter. Roars. It was calm. It was direct. It said the HOA had built an unauthorized structure on private property. It said the HOA had damaged landscaping and irrigation. It said the HOA had removed survey markers. Roars. It said the HOA had interfered with a security camera. It demanded that they preserve all emails, board minutes, contractor records, payment records, insurance information, and communications about the project. Roars. It gave them 10 business days to respond. Before she sent it, Carla asked one more question. She asked how long the HOA had been using that side driveway. I told her everyone said it had been there for years. Roars. Maybe decades. She looked back at the county plat. Then she looked at the easement records again. Her expression changed. Not shocked, not excited. Focused, she said the wall might not be the biggest problem. Roars. Then she turned the plat toward me. She pointed at the driveway the HOA had used every day. And she said there was no recorded easement giving them the right to use it. Roars. That was when I realized this was not just about a wall built during my honeymoon. The HOA had been treating my private property like community land for almost 20 years, and they had just handed me the proof to stop them. Roars. Carla did not get excited when she found the missing easement. That was what made it scarier. She did not smile, she did not say we had won. She just sat there with the county plat in front of her and followed the lines with a pen. Roars. Then she asked me to explain how the HOA driveway worked. I told her there was one paved strip running beside my yard. That strip connected to 3 smaller internal driveways. Roars. One went to the maintenance shed, one went to the back row of townhomes, and one curved toward the rear exit gate. For years, everyone in Cedar Hollow called it the HOA access drive. Roars. Trash trucks used it, landscaping crews used it, board members used it. Some residents used it every morning because it was faster than driving through the main entrance. But when Carla compared the plat, Roars. The deed and the easement records, the truth was simple. The HOA access drive was not on HOA land. It ran across my lot, not partly, not barely. Directly, the only recorded easement near that strip was for utilities. Roars. Water, sewer, drainage, electrical service. Nothing in that document allowed the HOA to pave a road. Nothing allowed residents to drive across it. Nothing allowed the board to build a wall. Roars. And nothing allowed them to treat my side yard like common property. Carla explained it carefully. A utility easement does not become a driveway easement just because people use it that way. Roars. A convenient shortcut does not become community land because an HOA board says it is, and a mistake repeated for 20 years does not magically rewrite a recorded deed. That was the legal turn Marlene never saw coming. Roars. The HOA thought the fight was about the wall they had built during my honeymoon. But the wall only exposed the bigger problem. They had been using land they never owned. Roars. And they had put that fact in writing when they applied for a permit calling my property common area. Carla ordered a full title review. She wanted to make sure there was not some old agreement buried in the records. Roars. For 3 days I barely slept. I checked my email too often. I kept walking outside and looking at that stone wall, the one they had built, like I did not exist every time I saw it. Roars. I thought about Rachel's trees. I thought about Dennis pulling out my survey stakes. I thought about Marlene standing in my driveway, telling me the neighborhood was bigger than my little strip of grass. Roars. Then Carla called. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the weight in it. The title review found no recorded driveway easement, no road dedication, no transfer to the HOA, no amendment to the plat. Roars. No maintenance agreement, no access rights for residents. The land was mine. The driveway was on my property, and the HOA had no legal right to keep using it as a road. Carla sent the demand letter that same afternoon. Roars. She sent it to the HOA. She sent it to the management company. She sent it to the contractor. She sent it to the HOA's registered agent. The letter said the HOA had 10 business days to confirm that it would remove the unauthorized wall. Roars. It demanded payment for the damaged sprinkler line. It demanded replacement of the trees. It demanded reimbursement for the survey. It demanded that all fines against me be withdrawn. Roars. It also demanded that the HOA stop using my private property as a driveway. That last part changed everything. The board did not respond with an apology. They responded with arrogance. Roars. Their attorney sent a letter saying the HOA had relied on the driveway for years. He said the community would suffer if access was limited. He said my objection was unreasonable. Roars. He said I was creating a hardship for dozens of homeowners, but he did not attach a recorded easement because he did not have one. Marlene also sent an email to the neighborhood. Roars. She called me Styles. She said I was threatening to block important community access. She said the board would not allow one homeowner to hold Cedar Hollow hostage. That email was a mistake. Roars. A very expensive mistake, because in the same message she admitted, the driveway crossed my lot. She described it as a historic access route over lot 27. Carla printed that email and smiled for the first time. Roars. Not a big smile, just enough to tell me Marlene had finally helped us. After that, Carla told me we had two choices. We could file suit immediately, or we could give the HOA one final chance to correct the problem. Roars. I asked what would happen if they refused. She said then, we would ask the court to confirm my property rights. We would seek damages. We would seek an order removing the wall. Roars. And we would seek an injunction stopping unauthorized access. But there was one more option, one I had not considered, Carla said. I had the right to use my own land. I could fence it. Roars. I could landscape it. I could place a permitted boundary wall on it, as long as I followed setback rules, drainage rules, and county permitting requirements. I did not need HOA permission to protect land that was not common area. Roars. So I did everything slowly. I did everything in writing. I did everything by the book. First, I sent the HOA formal notice. Then I waited. They ignored it. Roars. Then I applied for a county permit to build a low boundary wall along my confirmed property line. Not in the public road, not across anyone else's deeded land, not blocking emergency access. Roars. Only on my property. The county reviewed the plat, they reviewed the survey, they reviewed the site plan, they approved the permit. Roars. The permit officer even noted that the wall did not interfere with a recorded access easement because no such easement existed. That sentence became the most important sentence in the entire file. Roars. When the contractor I hired arrived, I stayed outside the whole time. Not because I wanted drama, because I wanted cameras on everything. I wanted the permit visible. I wanted the survey stakes visible. Roars. I wanted every block placed exactly where the county allowed it. By sunset, the wall was finished. It was clean. It was simple. It was legal. And it changed Cedar Hollow overnight. Roars. The maintenance driveway no longer connected to the rear exit. The back row shortcut no longer connected to the side gate. The little paved route the HOA had treated like its own private road now ended at my boundary wall. Roars. For the first time in almost 20 years, my land was no longer open for everyone else to use. Marlene noticed before sunrise, and when she came pounding on my garage door the next morning. Roars. Screaming that I had sealed the HOA driveways, she had no idea the sheriff was about to ask her for the one document she could never produce. By the time the sheriff stepped out of his cruiser. Roars. Marlene had already gathered half the neighborhood. She was pacing in front of my new wall. Her phone was in one hand. Her HOA binder was in the other. Every few seconds, she pointed at the blocked driveway like it was evidence of a crime. Roars. But I did not move. I stood on my side of the wall. My permit was taped to the front. My survey stakes were still in the ground, and my attorney, Carla, was standing beside me with a folder under her arm. Roars. That changed Marlene's face. She had expected me to be alone. She had expected me to be nervous. She had expected me to apologize once the sheriff arrived. Instead, I had documents. Roars. The deputy asked what was going on. Marlene immediately accused me of blocking an official HOA access road. She said residents were trapped. She said maintenance vehicles could not pass. Roars. She said I had created a safety hazard. She said the wall needed to come down immediately. The deputy listened. Then he asked for proof that the driveway belonged to the HOA. Marlene opened her binder. Roars. She pulled out a neighborhood map. It was printed in color. It had the Cedar Hollow logo on top. It showed the driveway as part of the community layout. But Carla calmly explained that a marketing map was not a recorded easement. Roars. The deputy looked back at Marlene. He asked for the recorded document. Marlene flipped through the binder faster. Her hands were not steady anymore. She found meeting minutes. Roars. She found landscaping approvals. She found old maintenance invoices. She found emails about paving repairs. But she did not find an easement because one did not exist. Then code enforcement arrived. Roars. A county inspector stepped out with a clipboard. Behind him came the surveyor Paul, the same man who had marked my property line. He did not argue with anyone. He did not raise his voice. Roars. He simply set up his equipment and started checking the boundary. The crowd got quieter with every measurement. Marlene kept trying to interrupt. She said the HOA had used the driveway for years. Roars. She said everyone knew it was community access. She said I was abusing a technicality. The inspector finally told her that property records were not a technicality, they were the record. Roars. Then Paul unfolded the original subdivision plat on the hood of his truck. He placed my deed beside it. He placed the certified survey beside that. Then he traced the line with his finger. Roars. The wall I built was inside my lot. The wall the HOA built during my honeymoon was also inside my lot, and the driveway they had been using was not marked as HOA property. It was not marked as common area. Roars. It was not marked as a private road. It was inside lot 27. My lot that was when several neighbors started asking questions. One man asked if the HOA had spent reserve money building on private land. Roars. A woman from the back row asked why residents were told I was blocking an emergency route. Another neighbor asked why no one had checked the deed before construction started. Marlene tried to turn the crowd against me again. Roars. She said I was punishing innocent homeowners. She said I should have worked with the board. She said I had gone too far. Carla opened her folder. Then she handed the deputy and the inspector copies of the demand letter. Roars. She also handed over the permit record for the HOA's decorative wall. The permit described the land as common area adjacent to lot 27. The inspector read that line twice, then he looked at the survey. Roars. That was the first official problem for the HOA. They had applied for a permit using the wrong land description. Then Carla showed the camera screenshots. Dennis pulling out survey stakes. Roars. Workers crossing my yard. One worker turning my camera toward the sky. The inspector expression changed. The deputy asked if we had the full video files. Carla said yes, they were preserved with timestamps. Roars. They were backed up and they could be provided formally. Dennis, who had been standing near the mailbox, suddenly stopped talking. The contract-ass project manager arrived a few minutes later. Roars. He looked pale when he saw the county inspector. He said his crew had built where the HOA told them to build. Marlene snapped that the contractor should have verified the location. Roars. The project manager opened his phone. Then he showed Carla an email. In that email, the contractor had asked the HOA to confirm the wall location before work began. Roars. Marlene had replied that the homeowner was out of town and the work needed to be finished before he came back. The silence after that was heavier than shouting. The inspector issued a notice of violation for the HOA wall. Roars. He said the structure had been built in a location not supported by the permit. He ordered the HOA to stop all further work on the disputed area. He also required them to submit a correction plan. Roars. The deputy told Marlene that my wall was a civil property matter, supported by county records and a valid permit. He said he would not order me to remove it. He said no one from the HOA was allowed to enter my property to touch it. Roars. For the first time since I had known her, Marlene had nothing to say. She stood there holding her binder. But the binder did not matter anymore. The shouting did not matter. The threats did not matter. Roars. The driveway was no longer a neighborhood argument. It was a documented property dispute. It had a survey, it had permits, it had video, it had a county file number, and from that moment on, roars, the HOA could not bully its way out of the truth. The fallout started that same week, not with a public apology, not with Marlene admitting she was wrong. It started with insurance companies. Roars. The HOA's insurer contacted Carla first, then the contractor's insurer contacted her, then the management company asked for a copy of every document we had. Suddenly, the people who had ignored me for weeks wanted everything in writing. Roars. The videos, the survey, the deed, the permit records, the demand letters, the photos of Rachel's trees, the pictures of the broken sprinkler line, the screenshot of Dennis pulling out the survey stakes. Roars. And the email where Marlene told the contractor to finish the work before I got home. That email changed everything. The HOA tried to blame the contractor. The contractor tried to blame the HOA. Roars. The management company said the board had approved the project without proper documentation. And Marlene kept saying everyone was overreacting, but nobody believed her anymore. Roars. At the next public HOA meeting, the clubhouse was packed. I did not speak much. Carla did most of the talking. She laid out the facts in order. The HOA had no recorded driveway easement. Roars. The HOA had built a wall on private property. The HOA had described my land as common area on a permit application. The HOA had fined me for objecting to damage they caused. Roars. And the HOA had allowed a board member to remove survey stakes before construction began. Every sentence made the room quieter, then louder. Residents started asking about the money. Roars. How much had the wall cost? Who approved the contractor? Why had reserve funds been used for a project on land the HOA did not own? Why had Marlene told everyone I was blocking a legal community road? Roars. She tried to answer, but every answer made it worse. The county gave the HOA a deadline to remove the wall they had built on my land. Not repair it, not move it later, remove it. Roars. The contractor came back with a different crew. This time they stayed on camera. They worked slowly. They marked every line. They took down the stone wall piece by piece. Rachel stood beside me in the backyard while they did it. Roars. She did not smile. Neither did I. It did not feel like revenge. It felt like getting back something that should never have been taken. After the wall came down, the HOA had to restore the strip of land. Roars. They repaired the sprinkler line, they replaced the damaged sod, they paid for 2 new maple trees, they reimbursed my survey costs, they canceled every fine they had sent me. Roars. They paid part of my attorney fees as part of the settlement. They also paid a separate amount for the unauthorized use of my property during the dispute. The final number was not life-changing. Roars. But it was enough to hurt. More important than the money was the change that followed. The HOA had to reopen the old north access road that had been abandoned years earlier. That meant new grading. Roars. New gravel, new gatework, new signage, and a special assessment the board had to explain to every resident. People were furious, but this time they were not furious at me, they were furious at the board. Roars. 2 weeks later, Marlene resigned before the recall vote could remove her. Dennis resigned the same night. The management company ended its contract at the end of the quarter. Roars. The contractor lost all future HOA maintenance work in Cedar Hollow, and the new board passed a rule requiring a recorded survey and attorney review before any construction near a property line. Roars. As for my wall, it stayed the one I built, the legal one. It was not tall, it was not ugly, it did not have a message painted on it. It was just a clean boundary wall, built exactly where the county said my property ended. Roars. Some neighbors apologized, some avoided me. A few still acted like I had caused the problem, but I knew the truth. I had not taken anything from the HOA. I had only stopped them from taking more from me. Roars. Rachel eventually planted her new trees along the side yard. This time we planted them behind the wall every time I saw those trees. Roars. I remembered how close we came to losing that strip of land simply because someone with a title thought she could bully us into silence. That is the thing about property lines. Roars. They are quiet until someone crosses them. Then they become everything. So if you ever buy a home, especially in an HOA, keep your deed, keep your survey, save every email, back up your camera footage. Roars. And never let anyone tell you that a few feet of your land does not matter, because I did not win by yelling louder than Marlene. I did not win by breaking anything. I did not win by playing dirty. Roars. I won because I stayed calm. I kept the proof, I followed the law, and when the time came I let the property line speak for itself. If you have ever dealt with an HOA that tried to control land it did not own. Roars. Share your story in the comments, and if this story helps even one homeowner protect their property before it is too late, then that wall did more than block a driveway. It drew a line no bully could cross again.